Guruve Gauri Chanjaya Radhikaya Tadale Krishnaya Krishna Bhaktaya Tadabhaktaya Namo Namaha Panchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Vaevacha Patitanam Bhavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So Dandavat Pranam devotees. So I'm keeping up with the questions and answers session. I'm a little bit behind. I had some work that had to be done, and so I was unable to catch up fully with some questions that came in. And I'm maybe working from the middle a little bit back and then a little forward. So I'm starting with a question that was in the middle. Let me get to the question here. And I think that'll be it for this morning because I have some appointments and things like that. So the question was, it's from a couple, that they see so much controversy about many different topics in bhakti, and some of them seem to become really disturbing in terms of how the interaction between devotees go on. And is there any one thing that everybody can agree on? And then there's like a list of different things that apparently the couple has observed over the course of years, very like the fall of the Jiva from the spiritual world, the Svarupa Jiva issue, issues about kirtans. I mean, they listed a number of things that they've seen controversies arise from, and they were just asking, is there anything that everyone can mutually agree on that's sort of a harmony? I think later on they write, something that's the harmony principle in bhakti. Well, I know in our Sangha we actually had a book, I'm not sure of the origin of the book, but it spoke about harmony. So I think it was a series of lectures that my Guru Pada Padma had given, and it was, turned into a book, and it spoke about harmony. But also, no matter what kind of philosophical or theological conversations arise, and they will arise from time to time because the theological foundation of bhakti is so vast and the writings are so voluminous. Jiva Goswami himself wrote 400,000 verses. So, and then all of our acharyas, one of the hallmark qualities is that they manifest more and more realizations regarding the path of bhakti. So, and I think that will be something continued into the future. People will continue to write. So, because of that vastness of knowledge regarding the nature of the Nam, Rup, Gun, Parikar, Leela, everything regarding Shri Radha Krishna Mahaprabhu, then, obviously there's going to be, and it always has been historically, times when differences of opinion and divergent opinions arise. Even the very famous festival of Narottam Das Thakur at Kaituri, when you read about it, it's described that also there was a huge Ishtagoshti in the presence of Janavamam, where many practices, many different nuances of our philosophy were put on the table for reconciliation, because there will always be, obviously, in such a large volume, as I mentioned in the beginning, of information, some different understandings will be gleaned by different people, and, that understanding may spread in one community. And then, of course, you have situations where there's actually opposidantic diversions from the path of bhakti, like Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur. He recognized during his time 13 apasampradayas, means 13 sort of things which seem to have had a footing in bhakti, but then some deviation came philosophically or in a matter of practice that created a apasampradaya, something that was opposite of the actual line of the teachings of Sriman Mahaprabhu. So historically and obviously in contemporary times, these things are going to come up. There's no doubt about it. So you're asking what is the one harmonizing principle for everything, and that's the individual bhajan of the devotee. Because bhajan is the essential reason that everyone came to Krishna consciousness. So of course bhajan means a certain amount of maturity has taken place from the time a person took an interest in trying to seek out what else there was besides birth, old age, disease, and death. So at that time, a person takes an interest, well, what else is there? And then they may take some interest in finding a spiritual path. And depending on their previous sanskars, means their previous impressions from past lives, etc., they will be attracted to the path of bhakti. And accordingly, also to their sanskars or impressions, they will be at a certain level of unfoldment on the path of bhakti. So wherever you left off in your last life, you'll pick up in this iteration in that place, essentially, in your unfoldment. So even in the bhakti community or the Vaishnava Mandal as a whole, not everybody's exactly in the same place at the same time, and we're all marching in unison or in lockstep towards the goal. Everybody has their individual unfoldments that have come from Praktana, Aduniki, Chasti, Yasyat, Bhakti Vasana. Different bhakti impressions that have come from Praktana means previous, and Adunik means even in this life, continued impressions that are coming in the heart, is determining exactly where someone is in their unfoldment. But harmonizing to everyone is the principle of doing bhajan, right? And bhajan means, the root of the word bhajan is bhajdatu iti sevayam, the mood to serve Krishna. So according to your maturation, that mood has more or less specificity, that mood has more or less intensity around how you're practicing to attain it. That mood has more or less knowledge base to it. In other words, if you don't understand much about the object of your worship and service, then obviously the nature of your ability to serve has some hindrance, right? And not hindrance, I don't know if that's the best word, but it has some growth to be accomplished, right? And if you have some maturation, then you're looking for more maturation to obtain perfection, right? Because the path of bhakti has a subject, has a perfection, right? Many things in the material world, no matter how accomplished you become in them, in that particular field, there's not an idea, I will be perfect. Because in the material world, there's no such thing as perfection. There's high degrees of accomplishment in something, but there's not necessarily perfection. But the path of bhakti gives a perfection, because it is not a material thing, it's a spiritual phenomenon, and therefore there is the possibility of obtaining a perfection. And the practice for that perfection is bhajan. So another thing is that many people, according to their sanskars or impressions, being at a particular place of unfoldment, may have different abilities to digest different things in that volume we spoke about of teachings. And that will also naturally give rise to different, because one of the things about any spiritual practice is that faith has a dynamic to it where when you invest your faith in something, you're holding on to that thing as something that you consider absolute. And if you have, by the nature of your faith, taken faith even in a part of that overall thing you're doing, the overall practice of whatever you're doing, once you put your faith in a particular aspect of it, you want to think, this is the sure footing. It's not going to be subject to change, right? When I've understood, okay, that's the next step, I want to be able to firmly plant my foot on that and take the next step. But bhakti is a gradual unfoldment of realizations. And sometimes your realizations may, in fact, displace to some degree something you thought previously I got it, I grasped it. Now, something comes, an epiphany, a realization comes, and you realize, no, maybe perhaps, whoa, that's not exactly what I thought. I had it all figured out, and now something came, and oh boy, it's slightly different, right? But we shouldn't see it like that. So in speaking about harmony, we have to learn to reconcile and harmonize even things that arise in our own growth, what to speak of the larger Vaishnav Mandal, right? So even our own growth, if we had a certain kind of understanding, and then in the deepening of our practice, something came to show that that particular understanding wasn't quite as evolved, then what we'll do is we'll take that we previously had and we'll put it in servitude to that higher understanding, because that's what's happening. The unfoldments are gradual. So there was no unfoldment or event or anything else that was negative to the overall growth of bhakti. I remember having a conversation with a devotee who had taken initiation, I think, either 2 or 3 times, and each time the person that they had reposed their faith in fell away from the process. So they became like, listen, how could this be something spiritual and these kind of things happen, right? Because it wasn't on me. I put my faith in those persons based on the institutional instructions or whatever it was, and they failed. So in having a conversation with that particular devotee, I mentioned, well, nothing is always just the activities of someone else. And I spoke to him from the verse, Taktayano kampam sushamikshimano, bunja evatmakritam vipakam. So we also have some dealings in anything that takes place in our life. We have some input in that from our karmic portfolio or whatever it might be, and in bhakti from our previous bhakti samskars, etc. There's some implication of our own selves in that outcome or in that dealing. So I told him that perhaps if you looked at it from the point of view that those 2 or 3 circumstances was teaching you Guru Tattva, because each time that you reposed your faith and this situation happened, it created a greater determination to then, not based on consensus of other people or social dynamics or even institutional dynamics, all of what Srila Jiva Goswami Pad says, and our Srila Prabhupada quotes in Adi Leela 135 in the purport, that social, hereditary, customary, and ecclesiastical considerations should never be there in our understanding of taking initiation. But, things being what they were, and, maybe everybody not being so familiar with Guru Tattva, these things were happening, right? So I said, you should see that Guru Tattva was being taught to you via these experiences. So rather than reading it in a book, you were having live experiences of what is Guru Tattva. That same devotee ended up taking initiation from Sadguru and became very happy in the process of bhakti. So now looking back on that earlier circumstances, actually you can look that by the mercy of Guru and Krishna, they taught you Guru Tattva, and they taught you the value of your faith currency. That faith is such a valuable thing because the entire process of bhakti, Shraddha Anusari, follows the path of faith. So where you deposit your faith is a very important thing. Or you learned all of that. Krishna directly and Gurudev directly taught you all of those things through those circumstances. So everything in bhakti can be harmonized. Everything in bhakti, because Krishna's told himself, Pratyakshvagamam damyam shushukam kartamavyayam, that the process itself, because it is revelatory in nature, means you're coming more and more to understand yourself by the depth of your practice. Then when you understand what's going on, susukam kartamavyayam, you realize that the practice and all the things that happen in it are actually very blissful. Even those encounters that you may have with devotees where there's a lack of resonance. Something has happened, something goes on, there's disagreement, this thing or that thing. One of the things it teaches is that bhajan then becomes shelter. Because whenever we face any kind of difficulty, everyone looks for shelter, no matter if it's emotional, physical, mental, whatever it might be. everyone looks for shelter from that particular distress or challenge, right? So Krishna says, when you take shelter in bhajan, in bhakti, susukam kartamavyayam, it not only removes the nature of the perceived negativity in that particular thing, but susukam kartamavyayam, it manifests susuk, a greater happiness, because you can understand that this bhajan shelter is so great that it removes any vestige of material consideration I have. And any kind of suffering we're having is due to some connection with self-interest in the material world. Almost, there's no circumstance you can produce in the material world that's miserable, that's not the cause of the combination of self-interest, right, and not being steeped in bhajan, but usually self-interest and some karmic unfoldment in the material world. So when we take shelter in bhajan, then that is by the influence of bhajan removed, because this is the whole meaning of the word bhajan kriya, right? Kriya means an empowered energy in bhajan that has the ability to anartha nivritti, to remove obstacles, right? And anartha nivritti, even though it's mentioned as essentially 27 things, so you can break them down. One section is on Anishtita Bhakti, one section on 4 types of 4 anarthas, one section on 5 types of subtle influences on the mind when we're attempting to do the essential ingredient in bhajan, which is Harinam, right? But essentially, the power in bhajan dissipates the darkness of those kinds of anarthas. So the harmonizing principle, if you want to find one within bhakti, is the depth of bhajan practice. And bhajan means Shravan, Kirtan, Vishnu Smaran, etc. Right? This is especially Nam Kirtan. Taramaje Savasrestra Nam Kirtan. So being absorbed especially in Nam Jap, Nam Kirtan, this is the sum and substance, the essence of the practice of bhajan life. And this means that we have to take great faith and have great concentration, absorption in Sri Harinam. And there are niyamita smarane nakala. There are no hard and fast rules for Harinam. This is how merciful Bhagavan is. No hard and fast rules, unlike the chanting of your Diksha mantras, which should be chanted at certain times, under certain conditions, certain standards of cleanliness, everything else. Serving Takaji, you need to have certain standard of cleanliness, punctuality, so many things. But for Harinam, Niyamita Smarane Nakala, to do your Harinam, to remember Harinam, there's no rule, regulation. So this is the ultimate mercy of Bhagavan, that he's descended as Nam Roop. And in that Nam is everything. Nam Namakari Bahuta Nija Sarva Shakti. So it is not like it is an aspect of something. It is everything. All of Bhagavan's pastimes, Ashtakali Leela is in Harinam. The root of Radha and Krishna in Harinam and Mahaprabhu. Everything is in Harinam. Bhaktivinoda Thakur made the statement that actually he prays that his perfection, that Harinam will grant that perfection. More Siddha Deha Diye Krishna Pasira Kegiya. Oh Harinam, please give me my Siddha Deha and bring me near to Krishna. So Harinam contains everything. So if you want to harmonize everything, then take shelter of bhajan, especially Harinam, right? And the symptom that you're having a relationship with Harinam is a lack of desire to give it up. So, you know, in your chanting, you'll find ways to increase the quality and quantity. Increasing the quantity without increasing the quality is a start, it's a path. But increasing the quality and the quantity is symptomatic of a resonance that's coming, Namagane Sada Ruchi, that there's a Ruchi coming in Harinam, and that's a very good sign that, oh, my Harinam is everything, right? Anything, I can take shelter of Harinam. And then also, not only under the conditions of distress or the situations of negativity or problems, okay, let me take my aspirin of Harinam, right? So we don't want to make Harinam our servant, but we want to take Harinam in such a mood that we're begging for service through Harinam, which is the actual root of Radha and Krishna. We're begging for their seva, according to our depending on where you are in your maturation, what mood of service you want to have. So you want to take absorption in Harinam with the mood of a beggar. With the mood of a beggar, that I have this deep desire for the seva of Radha and Krishna, and if you have some maturation in a particular mood, and so, O Harinam, Nama Chintamani Krishna's Chaitanya Rasa Vigraha, you are Chintamani. You have the ability to grant all desires. But I don't want to have any self-desires. Nadanam Najanam Nashundarim Kavitam Va Jagadisha Kamaye. Realize whole Shishashtakam, by the way, is all written about Harinam. Mahaprabhu, he wrote Shishashtakam early on as a way to practice bhakti. And it was all based on Harinam. And then in the Antyalila, I think chapter 20 of Antyalila, he recites Shishashtakam in the epiphany of the moods of separation of Radhika. He's reciting those very verses of Shishashtakam. So you can see, if you study Shishashtakam closely, all of the glories of Harinam and how they're present there. And how all the moods that we aspire for in the service to Mahaprabhu Radha Krishna, they're all embedded in Harinam. And you will not get them from someplace else. You have to understand the need to become absorbed in Harinam. Harinam is not just a form though. It doesn't mean Nam Aksha. Aksha means the letters. So Hare Krishna, Hare Rama. So no, we want to find the Chaitanya Ras, Vigraha, to find the form of Rasa in Harinam, you have to hear Harikatha. Because Harikatha is the Svarupa of Harinam. So if you hear Harikatha and do Harinam with sincerity and trying your level best to avoid the aparaj related to Harinam, Harinam will give reciprocation and give many kinds of realizations in the heart and give many kinds of inspiration. And it will not be dependent on where you are in your struggle with Vishai. So some people think, oh, first I need to get myself together. I have to get rid of all of my childhood trauma, or I have to get rid of my emotional issues. I have to get rid of my tendencies for sinful life. No. No, Harinam is not dependent on you. Harinam is pure Swarup Shakti. It is the internal energy of God. And it's bhakti itself. So it's not dependent on your qualification for it. This is the Audhodya, the special mood of Mahaprabhu. His magnificence is that he gave, especially in this Kali Yuga, it's a special Kali Yuga, that he, Chirad Atadam Niju Guptavitam Swanama Prem Amrita Atyudara, Apamara Yovita Taragora. So Apamara means those who are extremely low in their quality of activity in life. To them, he gave Harinam imbued with Prem Amrit, the nectar of love. This is the extreme magnificence of Mahaprabhu. So we cannot think we need to make self-adjustments before we approach Harinam. We should approach Harinam dragging with us all of our habits. The drinking, the tendency for sex life, the tendency for this thing or that thing, the tendency for enjoyment in this way. Drag it all with you to the feet of Harinam. And beg Sri Harinam to give you that jewel of the ruchi, which displaces all of those other things. Rasovrajam rasopiyasha param jusanavartate. Every single person, depending on your samskars, but so many people, we've all come with so many tendencies from previous lives, from time without any beginning. And those impressions are still there in the heart for enjoyment in various kinds of ways. But have faith that bhakti does not care. You understand? Bhakti doesn't care. Bhakti will come and perform its function on the basis of your faith and your sincerity. Bhakti doesn't care that you're still plagued by this thing or that thing. in the 11th canto Bhagavatam, it's clearly mentioned, Jata Sharo Matkateshu, Nivimat Savakamashu, Veda Dukatmanam Kamam, Parityagyopi Anisharaha. You may be even stuck in a thing that's hard to give up. For some reason, this was some deep material impression that's very difficult to give up. Veda Dukatmanam Kamam. I know this is not good. It's very hard. I can't give it up. But one should still follow the bhajan process. Right? Still, one should take to bhajan with a deep mood of repentance. And if you have this mood of repentance and you're doing Harinam, right? As long as you don't develop the mentality of trying to clear what you've done by Harinam as your personal confessional booth. All right? So I'm going to do so many sins that I'm going into the booth of Harinam. If there's sincerity, Parityagyopi Anishara, I'm unable to control this particular plague of Vishai, this particular plague of material desire. But I sincerely want to obtain bhajan life and bhajan siddhi. Harinam will come and Harinam will, and it may take some time, and that's another thing. It's not that we can want it to work like the microwave works, right? We have to have the patience. That's why Rupa Goswami mentioned Daryat. Utsahan Nischayat Daryat. Both enthusiasm, patience, and confidence. The process will work, but we'll take to bhajan very deeply. And even those things which we may not grossly still be plagued by, we may be subtly still plagued by things. And bhakti, especially nam bhajan, will actually move those things out as well. So the devotee is asking, what is the harmonizing principle in the midst of either external, interpersonal conflicts or interpersonal conflicts? The harmonizing principle is going to be bhajan life, headed by nam bhajan. So I do have some appointments and everything. I pray to all the devotees that you'll pray for me to have such nam bhajan, to have such faith in that very thing, right? I'm trying my level best, and I'm also always praying for the additional mercy of so many Vaishnavas. If they'll give me their mercy, then that process may more easily and more readily come to me, because of the Vaishnav's kripa. Alright, devotees, dandavats, vancha kalpaturabhyascha, kripa shindubevacha, patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Jai Radhe Radhe.